My mom practically begged me to come home for the holidays. I'm Brielle Stanton, I'm 30, and I swear I don't know what I was thinking because I actually believed that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. She called me in London at 3 in the morning, full-on sobbing on FaceTime, mascara streaking, voice shaking, telling me we never see you anymore, the whole family needs you here, the kids keep asking about you, please don't do this to us. And I lay there in my tiny flat, staring at my ceiling, exhausted from my job and the constant gray drizzle outside, and I let the guilt pour over me like a cold shower. 10 hours on an overnight flight with knees pressed into the seat in front of me, 2 layovers, my phone dying halfway through, and I still dragged myself to her doorstep in San Diego with a suitcase stuffed with gifts for my brother's kids. I was so tired my bones felt hollow. I smelled like airplane coffee and recycled cabin air. My back was screaming. But I stood there anyway, balancing that stupid hope in my chest that the second she opened the door she'd smile and pull me into a hug the way she used to when I was little, like coming home meant something. The door flew open. No hello. No, how was your flight? No hug. Not even a look at my face. My mom's eyes dropped straight to my suitcase like she was checking the delivery she'd been waiting on. And in the most casual voice, like she was reading off a grocery list, she said, "You'll babysit Jason's kids. We're going on a family trip." I blinked, because I honestly thought I'd misheard her. Then my brother stepped into the doorway behind her wearing sunglasses indoors, duffel bag slung over his shoulder like he was headed to the airport right now, and the kids were literally hanging off his arms. He smirked at me like I was the entertainment and said, "Hey guys, don't wipe your snot on Aunt Brie. She's jet-lagged." They all laughed. My parents, my brother, the kids. Everyone cracking up like I was the punchline. I stood there with my hair in that flat, sad airplane way, and I could practically feel the credit card bill in my pocket from the tickets. I'd paid for just to get here. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I felt something in me click off. Like a switch. I smiled, set my suitcase down in the entryway, looked my mom dead in the eye, and said one sentence. Just one. And it was wild how fast the mood changed. The laughter died like someone had cut the sound. The color drained out of their faces. My mom's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't find air, and she kept whispering, "No. No, no, no way." Because by the time I finished saying that one sentence, their dream vacation wasn't happening. Their house wasn't safe. And I was done being their free babysitter and their private bank. But to understand why that single sentence froze the room, you have to understand what my family had been doing to me for years. My mom didn't just miss me when she called me crying in London. 2 weeks before that FaceTime meltdown, she'd been texting me screenshots of holiday prices. Hotel packages. Flight costs. Resort fees. Little hints sprinkled between heart emojis and "we deserve a break." She never asked directly at first. She never did. She just made sure I saw the number and felt the pressure. And then she'd hit me with it. Just this once. That phrase was the trapdoor under my entire adulthood. Just this once, can you help with the mortgage? Just this once, can you cover groceries until payday? Just this once, can you get Jason out of a jam? Just this once, can you do this for the kids? You're their aunt, they love you, you're so lucky you have that job overseas. Just this once was how every favor started, and somehow it was also how every favor became permanent. When my dad needed knee surgery, I wired money. When Jason maxed out credit cards chasing one of his big ideas, I helped him consolidate debt because my mom swore it was temporary and he'd be back on his feet any day. When the water heater broke, I paid. When the mortgage was overdue, I paid. And then my mom would post photos the next week at some new brunch place downtown like none of it had happened. I lived in a tiny flat in London. I cooked most of my meals at home. I walked to work in the rain because I didn't feel like spending money on Ubers. And somehow I was still paying for Uber Eats and streaming subscriptions in a house I didn't live in, on a continent I wasn't even on anymore. Every time I opened my banking app, there was some new little leak. A subscription renewal. Quick Venmo request. We're short this month, transfer. Death by 1,000 tiny withdrawals. This time, before I booked my flight home, I finally paid attention. I saved everything. Every Zelle transfer. Every PayPal receipt. Every text that said thank you honey, we'll pay you back when things calm down. I built a folder like I was building a case, because somewhere deep down, I think I already knew what I was going to have to do. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. An email from a bank with my name on a mortgage I did not remember signing up for. Because years ago, my parents had put me down as a co-borrower, just to get a better rate, and they'd treated it like a formality. Like it was nothing. Like it wouldn't touch me. And ever since, I'd been covering shortfalls without even realizing how much it mattered. Every missed payment wasn't just their problem. It was mine. Every time they forgot, my credit took the hit right alongside them. So while my mom sobbed on FaceTime about the kids missing me and how little Mia keeps asking when Aunt Bree is coming, I sat on my bed in London staring at my banking app and realizing the only time my family treated me like part of the group was when a bill was due. I almost said no. I almost told her to figure it out. But then another thought hit me, sharp and clear. If they were willing to drag me halfway across the world to use me as a built-in nanny and a walking credit line, then I was finally willing to show them what it looked like when I stopped playing along. So I booked the flight. And I booked other things too. A call with a financial advisor. A download of 3 years of statements. A simple legal agreement from a template site, cleaned up and made presentable, the kind of thing that doesn't sound dramatic until it's sitting on the table. In front of people who never expected you to put anything in writing. That's why, standing in that doorway in San Diego while my brother joked and my mom assigned me childcare like it was already decided, I wasn't just the jet-lagged daughter they were used to. I rolled my suitcase inside. The kids bounced around my legs like puppies. I followed them into the kitchen, and there it was on the counter like a glossy promise, their itinerary. Resort photos. Flight times. Family package, stamped in bold like a celebration. My mom tapped the brochure and said, "See? This is why we needed you here, honey. The kids will stay with you. We'll finally have a real vacation. You always say we should take care of ourselves." I looked down at the resort name, then at the confirmation email open on her phone, and I recognized the last 4 digits of the card used to book everything. My card. That same switch flipped in my chest again, only this time it didn't click off. It clicked on. They thought I'd flown 10 hours to step into my usual role. Smile. Nod. Babysit. Pay. Pretend it was love. But I had actually flown 10 hours to do something I should have done years ago. So I smiled sweetly and said, "Can you get everyone into the dining room? I just want to go over a few things before you leave." My dad sat at the head of the table like it was his courtroom. My mom hovered by the counter clutching the itinerary. Jason scrolled on his phone, half listening. The kids spun in circles on the tile, totally unaware. I opened my laptop. Pulled up the folder. Turned the screen so they could all see. And as calmly as I could manage, I said, "Before you go anywhere, we need to talk about money." Jason groaned, "Brielle, seriously? Right now?" My dad muttered something about timing. My mom gave me that wounded, offended look like I was the one being unreasonable. And I just clicked open the spreadsheet. Because if they wanted to treat me like a resource, I was about to show them exactly how much they'd taken. The spreadsheet filled the screen, and for a second none of them said anything. It was like their brains couldn't catch up to the idea that I'd actually kept track. My family lived on a kind of fog. A convenient haze where money showed up when they needed it, and nobody had to sit with the uncomfortable question of where it came from. I started speaking before my mom could pivot into tears. "Last March," I said, scrolling slowly, "you called me because the mortgage was 2 months behind. I wired $1,200. My dad's shoulders stiffened. Jason finally looked up from his phone. "In June," I continued, "Jason maxed out his card on business expenses. I sent 2,500. Jason's mouth twitched, like he wanted to laugh it off, but the sound didn't come. When the water heater broke, 900. When Dad's truck needed tires, 600. When the electric bill was past due, 300 here, 400 there. I scrolled so they could see the dates stacking up month after month. Line after line. Not a story. Not a feeling. Just numbers, organized and undeniable. This doesn't include the Disney Plus, Hulu, Netflix, Spotify family plan, I said, my finger hovering over those entries like a spotlight, or Walmart Plus, the cell phone plan, the grocery deliveries, the random emergency Venmo requests that always seem to line up with Black Friday or Labor Day. My mom's hand flew to her mouth when she saw screenshots of her texts next to transfers for gas to see grandma, followed by photos she'd posted from a nail salon that same afternoon. The way her eyes darted told me she was searching for some angle, some excuse, some way to make the math feel like a misunderstanding. My dad's jaw tightened hard when I clicked open the PayPal transfer labeled "Niece Surgery Copay," and right below it, the receipt for a brand new flat screen that had arrived at the house the same week. "This isn't fair," my mom whispered, her voice trembling. "You're making us look like bad people." I didn't even blink. "I'm not making you look like anything. I'm showing you what happened." Then I scrolled all the way down and stopped. At the bottom, in bold, the total sat there like a punch, just over $60,000. "In the last 36 months, I said quietly, I have sent this household a little over $60,000. The room went dead. Jason blinked hard like his eyes were burning. My dad stared at the wall as if the paint might offer him a way out. My mom started whispering, "No, no, no, that can't be right," like repetition could change arithmetic. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin stack of printed pages. I slid them onto the table, right next to the resort itinerary. "This," I said, tapping the top page, "is an agreement." Jason's head snapped up. "An agreement?" "It's not a lawsuit," I said. "I'm not dragging you into court today. It's just a written acknowledgement that you owe this money and you'll start paying it back. Slowly, whatever you can. 50 a month. 100. Something." My dad's eyes flashed. "We are family," he barked. "You don't put family in debt like that. What are you going to do, sue your own parents?" I held his stare. Family doesn't put their daughter on a mortgage without making sure she understands what it means. Family doesn't spend her money on brunch and vacations and then talk about her like she abandoned them. My mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Jason grabbed the papers and skimmed the first paragraph, his face draining as he realized it wasn't a bluff. "This is insane," he said, voice cracking. "I can't pay this back. None of us can." "I know," I said, leaning back. "And I'm not expecting you to. Not all at once. I'm expecting honesty. I'm done living in a world where you pretend you're victims and I'm some selfish career girl overseas." My mom shook her head over and over. "You wouldn't do this," she whispered. "You wouldn't humiliate your own family." "I'm not planning to," I said. "As long as you stop lying." Then I clicked to another tab. The resort confirmation filled the screen. Their names. The dates. The cheery little logo. And at the bottom, the last 4 digits of the card on file. My mom's eyes locked onto it like she couldn't breathe. "And about that trip," I said, still calm, "you might want to sit down for this part." My dad frowned. "What are you talking about?" I pointed to the status line under the reservation number. "Cancelled." My dad lurched up from his chair so fast it scraped the tile. "What is that?" 3 days ago. I said. I called the resort and the airline. Since those bookings were made with my card and my account, I had every right. The package was refunded. The flight credits were moved. The air in the room changed. It felt heavier, like the walls were listening. I closed the laptop halfway, just enough so I could see all of their faces at once. So when I told you at the door I wasn't babysitting while you went on vacation, I said, what I meant was, there is no vacation anymore. My mom made a strangled sound. Jason's mouth opened, then closed. My dad's face turned a shade of red I'd only seen when he'd been caught doing something he couldn't talk his way out of. You had no right, he snapped. Those are our tickets. I didn't flinch. They were bought with my money. My card. My account. The right was all mine. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he couldn't argue with facts. So he did what he always did, he went after my character. You're doing this to punish us, he said, voice thick with disgust. You're cruel. No, I said softly. I'm stopping. And then I clicked open the next window. And that brings me to the house we're sitting in right now. On the screen was an email from the bank. Both our names. The loan details. The official language that made it impossible to pretend this was casual. Gary Stanton. Brielle Stanton. Co-borrowers. My dad stared at the screen, and the color drained out of his face so fast it was almost shocking. My mom's voice came out thin. Brielle, please. Not this. We told you it was just paperwork. I swallowed the familiar ache that always showed up when my mother begged. That ache had been my leash for years. You told me it was a formality, I said. You told me it wouldn't affect me. But I'd been covering short payments on this mortgage for years. And every time you missed something, it hit my credit too. My mom's hands started to shake. My dad tried to recover. We were doing what we had to do. You were doing what was easiest, I said. For you. Then a small video window popped up in the corner of my screen. A woman's face appeared, framed by a London home office, neat and professional. My financial advisor. Hi, Brielle, she said. Is now still a good time? My dad hissed, who is that? This, I said without looking at him, is the person who explained what being a co-borrower actually means, and what my options are now that I'm done bailing you out. The advisor introduced herself politely, then spoke with calm precision. She explained that as a co-borrower, my credit was tied to the loan. Missed payments harmed me. I had the right to request removal from the loan, which usually meant my parents would need to refinance without me. And if they couldn't qualify a loan, the bank could require the debt be satisfied another way. Sometimes, that meant selling. My mom shook her head, voice trembling. You can't do that. We can't afford to move. We can't afford a higher payment. The advisor's voice stayed gentle. That is between you and the lender, ma'am. What I can say is Brielle is not obligated to keep her name on a loan that she is not benefiting from, especially when she is the one making up the difference. I thanked her and ended the call. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The room felt smaller, like the walls were inching inward. My dad rounded on me. You're going to make your own parents homeless over some numbers on a screen? I met his eyes. No. I'm going to stop letting you gamble with my future while you act like I owe you my entire life. I reached into my bag again and pulled out another paper, folded neatly. This is my formal notice, I said, laying it on the table, that I'm stopping all automatic payments connected to this property. The bank will contact you directly from now on. My mom's breath hitched. But that's where the grocery money comes from, she choked out. That's where we pay utilities. I held her gaze. The same way every other adult does, I said. With your own income. Your own budgeting. Your own consequences when you overspend. Jason's voice finally cracked through the silence, panic rising. Bree, you can't just pull everything away at once. At least give us time. I'll pick up more shifts. I swear. Just don't screw us like this. I turned to him, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. You're 34, I said. You have 2 kids. You should have been doing that years ago without me dangling in the background as a safety net. For a second, I almost softened. I felt it, that old reflex. The fixer in me reaching for the familiar role. Then I remembered the laughter at the door. The way my mom said, "You'll babysit," like it was automatic. Like I was a tool. And the softness snapped back into place behind a wall. I opened one more tab on my laptop, showing every monthly auto draft I'd set up over the years. Mortgage supplement. Power. Internet. Streaming bundles. Grocery deliveries. Car payment. Top-ups. My name sat beside the word payer over and over. As of today, I said, my cursor hovering over the cancel buttons, these stop. My mom made a small, broken sound. My dad sank into his chair staring at nothing. "This is cruel," he muttered. "No," I said. "This is me stepping out of a role you wrote for me without asking. I'm giving you the chance to live within what you can actually afford, without hiding behind my bank account." Then I started clicking. Cancel. Confirm. Cancel. Confirm. My phone pinged with confirmation emails as each one shut off. And in that kitchen, with their vacation gone and their safety net unraveling in real time, I could see the moment they realized the truth. This time, I wasn't coming home to save them. The confirmations kept rolling in on my phone, little digital pings that sounded way too loud in that silent kitchen. Each one felt final in a way words never had. My mom's breathing had gone shallow. Jason stared at the table like he might fall through it if he looked up. My dad just sat there, shoulders slumped now, the anger drained out of him and replaced with something closer to fear. I closed the laptop and stood up. My legs were shaky, but not enough to stop me. "After this," I said, keeping my voice low, "if you decide to tell anyone that I abandoned you, just remember I have every receipt. Every transfer. Every bill. I'm done being the villain in a story you tell other people so you don't have to feel guilty." I reached for my suitcase. "You wanted a real vacation," I added quietly. "Maybe this is it. A vacation from pretending I'm your built-in solution to every bad decision." That's when my dad snapped. He shot up so fast his chair screeched across the tile. "If you walk out after this little show," he barked, "don't bother coming back. You're not welcome in this house if you're going to hold money over our heads." My mom rushed forward, grabbing his arm. "Gary, stop," she said, but her body didn't actually block him. She turned to me instead. "Brielle, you're tired. You just flew in. We can talk about this. You don't have to do something you'll regret." Jason didn't say a word. He just stared at the floor, jaw clenched, like he was trying not to see the whole thing collapse. I paused in the doorway, my hand on the handle, every muscle buzzing. For a split second, the old urge surged up. Drop the suitcase. Apologize. Say we'll figure something out. Make it go away like I always did. Then I remembered my mom opening the door and looking straight at my luggage instead of my face. I straightened and said, "You're the ones who decided my value here was measured in what I pay for. If I'm not welcome without my credit card, then I was never really welcome at all. Get out," my dad said, pointing at the door. "And don't come crying to us when London chews you up and spits you out." I almost laughed. London wasn't the place that had been eating me alive. That kitchen was. I stepped outside into the California sun and pulled the door shut behind me. No one followed. No one called my name. Inside, I could hear the kids arguing about a cartoon, completely unaware that their vacation had just evaporated. I ordered an Uber and dragged my suitcase to the curb, feeling strangely homeless and free at the same time. The driver popped the trunk and asked where I was headed. I gave him an address I had never given my parents. A glass high-rise in downtown San Diego, about 15 minutes from their quiet little street, but a completely different world. 6 months earlier, after one too many midnight transfers and guilt-soaked calls, I'd used my savings and my steady UX salary to put a down payment on a tiny one-bedroom condo. I told my family I was just thinking about moving back to the States someday. The truth was, I'd already signed the papers. I'd planned to disentangle myself slowly, carefully, without blowing everything up. That plan died in their entryway. When the Uber pulled up in front of the building, it felt unreal. I swiped my key fob, rolled my suitcase through a lobby I'd only seen twice, and rode the elevator up to the 8th floor. The condo smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. Not like stress. Not like resentment. Just empty. Mine. I dropped my suitcase in the middle of the living room and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing with, "Can you send something until Friday?" or "The card got declined. Can you fix it?" I opened my banking app and went through the last loose threads. Disney Plus. Cancelled. Hulu. Cancelled. Spotify family account. Cancelled. Shared cloud storage. Random Apple charges for games the kids downloaded. Cancelled, cancelled, cancelled. Each confirmation email felt like cutting a string that had been wrapped around my ribs for a decade. I brewed a cup of cheap grocery store coffee in my barely stocked kitchen and sat cross-legged on the floor because I didn't even own a couch yet. In the quiet, the doubts rushed in. What if I'd gone too far? What if they really couldn't keep the lights on? What if I'd become the selfish, ungrateful daughter my dad always warned me not to be? Then I remembered my mom's tone at the door. "You'll babysit." I remembered Jason's joke while they all laughed. I remembered how automatic it all felt to them. Under the fear and guilt, something else settled in my chest. Thin. Quiet. Solid. Peace. They were going to feel my absence. The bills would come. The late fees would stack. The life they'd built on my invisible paycheck would start to wobble. But tonight, in this tiny, echoing condo, there was no one to save but me. I took a sip of coffee and watched new emails roll in from the bank, the utilities, the streaming services. All confirmations. All final. For the first time, my family was on their own. The first sign that my decision was really hitting them didn't come through a phone call. It came through Facebook. About a week later, my friend Emma sent me a screenshot with a single message, *, "Have you seen this?" *, it was my dad's profile. His name at the top. A long, dramatic post about how some kids forget who raised them the second they get a fancy job overseas. About how he and my mom were left with nothing right before Christmas. He never used my name. He didn't need to. "Our daughter flew in from London and decided money was more important than blood," he wrote. "Pray for us." The comments were brutal. People I'd known since braces and awkward school photos telling him how awful it was. How kids these days don't understand family. One woman suggested a GoFundMe. My stomach twisted like I'd swallowed ice. He was doing exactly what I warned him not to do. Turning himself into the victim. Turning me into the villain. Rewriting the story for an audience that had no idea how many times I'd quietly paid their bills. For a minute, I paced my living room with my phone in my hand, hovering over his contact. I almost drove back. Almost begged him to take it down. Almost offered to reinstate a payment just to make it stop. The old version of me was screaming. Instead, I opened my email and wrote to my financial advisor. I told her about the post. About the years of financial support. About cutting them off. I asked one simple question: was there anything else I needed to do to protect myself? Her reply was calm and thorough. Document everything. Save every transfer. Make sure the bank had a full picture of who'd actually been paying. She mentioned that when one person unofficially props up a household while others claim hardship, reviews sometimes follow. I didn't need instructions. I just needed to know I wasn't crazy. Over the next few weeks, envelopes started showing up at my parents' house. I didn't see them, but my mom's frantic texts told me enough. "Did you talk to the bank? They want updated documents. There's something from the IRS." I'm freaking out. I never said everything was fine. I'd said I was done covering things up. The fog they'd been living in was lifting. Jason eventually texted, asking to meet at a coffee shop near my building. When he walked in, he looked smaller. No sarcasm. Dark circles under his eyes. A delivery bag over his shoulder. He dropped into the chair across from me. "Dad needs to shut up online," he said. "He's making everything worse." I took a slow sip of coffee before answering. "What I did," I said, "was stop pretending." He admitted he'd picked up more shifts. Sold old gear. Moved into a smaller place. "It sucks," he said. "But I actually see what things cost now." That was the point. Meanwhile, my mom started selling designer bags she used to brag about. My dad's new TV disappeared. One gray morning, their truck was repossessed. The life they'd been faking was collapsing. And for the first time, it wasn't my job to hold it up. Through all of it, my dad kept my number unblocked. He never called to apologize. Never called to explain. Never called to ask how I was doing. Instead, he kept tossing little emotional grenades onto the internet, vague posts about betrayal and ungrateful children, hoping someone would carry them back to me so I'd feel guilty enough to fix things again. He told anyone who would listen that his daughter had abandoned him for money and status, carefully leaving out the part where most of that money had been flowing in the opposite direction for years. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't jump into the comments with screenshots. I didn't write my own dramatic post, even though the petty part of me desperately wanted to. I didn't need to. I had my records. I had my advisor. And for the first time, I had distance. Every time someone shared his post or mentioned it in passing, all I could think was that if they saw even one page of that spreadsheet, they wouldn't be asking why I walked away. They'd be asking how I survived as long as I did. By the time Christmas rolled around again, my parents' house and my life looked like two completely different universes. I learned the changes in small, indirect ways. A tagged photo of my mom at a discount store instead of her usual boutique. A grainy picture of Jason's kids in a cramped apartment instead of my parents' backyard. Messages from mutual acquaintances. Asking if everything was okay. I didn't explain. I didn't correct the narrative. I focused on my job in San Diego, on building my portfolio, on slowly turning my condo into a home. I bought a second-hand couch that sagged a little in the middle. A fake tree for the corner. Cheap fairy lights that made the place feel warmer than it had any right to feel. It wasn't impressive. It was honest. Then, one rainy Tuesday in December, someone knocked on my door. When I checked the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was my mom. She looked smaller somehow. No heavy makeup. No styled hair. Just a tired woman clutching a reusable grocery bag to her chest like it was armor. I hesitated, then opened the door. She stepped inside slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to take up space here. She stood in the middle of my living room and turned in a slow circle, taking in the couch, the window, the tiny Christmas tree with 3 mismatched ornaments. "I didn't know it looked like this," she said quietly. "I always pictured you in something bigger. Fancier." I shrugged. This is what I can afford when I'm not paying for 2 households. She winced like the words landed physically. Then she opened the bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. Not 60,000. Not even close. But it wasn't nothing. "It's from selling things," she said quickly. "Bags. Jewelry. That coffee table you hated. I've been picking up extra shifts at the office. It's not much, but it's a start." I stared at the check. It wasn't about the amount. It was about my mother, who had spent years treating my money like an unlimited resource, standing in my very human-sized living room and acknowledging, without excuses, that she'd taken advantage of me. She sat on the edge of the couch and started crying. Not the loud, performative sobbing from that 3 a.m. FaceTime call. Quiet, broken little sounds. Your father still says you betrayed us, she said. He tells everyone you think you're better than us. But I can't keep saying it anymore. Not after seeing the bank letters. Not after the papers. We did use you. I did. I sat next to her, leaving space between us. I'm not asking you to hate him, I said gently. I'm asking you to stop letting him rewrite what happened so he doesn't have to feel guilty. She nodded, wiping her face. Jason's working, she added. Really working. Warehouse shifts. Late nights. The kids share a room now, but it's his place. He pays for it himself. She hesitated. He wanted me to tell you, thank you. For the spreadsheet. I let out a short, surprised laugh. I didn't make that for him, I said. I made it for me. She looked at me carefully. Do you think, someday, we could have a Christmas where you come over and it's just dinner? No money. No bills. Just us? My throat tightened. Maybe, I said honestly. But only if everyone understands I'm not the safety net anymore. If I come, it's because I want to. Not because there's a payment due. She nodded again, stood up, and hugged me. A real hug this time. The kind I'd been chasing for years without realizing it. When she left, I put the check in a drawer. I didn't cash it right away. I just needed to know that, for once, the money was flowing in the other direction. As for my dad, the last thing I saw from him was another vague post about family turning their backs. I muted him. Then, finally, I blocked his number and his profile. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt like closing a wound that refused to heal. That Christmas Eve, I sat alone on my couch with the tree lights blinking and a cheap mug of hot chocolate warming my hands. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to be anywhere else. No flights. No babysitting schedule. No emergency transfers. Just quiet. Here's what I learned. Family doesn't stop being family just because you say no. The people who truly love you will adjust to your boundaries. The ones who only valued what you could provide will call you selfish the moment you stop bleeding for them. It hurts. It's lonely. But sometimes distance is the only way to stop drowning in someone else's bad decisions. So let me ask you this. If the people draining your bank account and your sanity share your last name, would you keep paying the price just to be called loyal? Or would you walk away like I did and finally give yourself permission to choose yourself first?